WIPACY. 94 WIP HD1 Philadelphia. Live from the Tasty Cake Studio. Sports Radio 94 WIP. Always live on the free Odyssey app.
All right, bewitching hour midnight here on 94 WIP. Just to clean up last hour, Alex Cobb got the last out. Missed out on the perfect game, walked the batter in the ninth, missed out on the no-hitter, gave up a double. It was a run-scoring double after the walk, so he didn't get a shutout either, but he did get a complete game victory. Got the final out. Giants beat the Reds 6-1 tonight. All right, then we are pumped up about baseball, mostly the hometown Phillies. Outstanding homestand, hitting home runs left, right, and center. But the football team is going to get underway defending their NFC championship before you know it, and they got their first 53-man roster done. And when I say first, I do mean that because there will be changes. And we're going to talk how they got to 53 and what those changes could very well be with a guy who covers them day in and day out, the editor of InsideTheIggles.com, Geoff Knox. G. Knox, how you be?
Hey, how's it going, man? Appreciate you working me in the schedule tonight.
No, thank you for staying up for me and appreciate your insight before you ever lay it on us. Kind of an intriguing day for the Birds. It wouldn't be a cut-down day if Howie Roseman didn't make at least one deal, and he did. Picked up a good young fourth-year tight end who was very highly thought of at draft time, but has had a middling career in Denver. You want to take a shot at the new Eagle tight end's last name's pronunciation?
I think it's a Quagianum, if I'm not mistaken. I've probably got a syllable or something wrong in there, but I think that's close. We'll just call him Albert O, as everybody's been saying.
You're a better man than me, Gunga Din, so thank you for at least trying. And, yes, he will be Albert O going forward. Like I said, I remember one of my draft guru guys loving a guy coming out of Missouri in the draft a couple of years ago. Had a good year in 2021 with the Broncos, put up some good numbers. Not as much last year. Their overall offense wasn't good. They were a bad team, period. He's a talent, and you get him. All you got to do is exchange a positioning for a sixth rounder for a seventh rounder, which isn't a major price to pay. But it now gives you 4 tight ends for the Eagles. Do the Eagles need 4 tight ends?
I don't think they do, unless they're thinking that Grant Calcaterra might fill some kind of void as that fifth wide receiver. But 4 tight ends is a little heavy here. You got a lot of guys who do different things, obviously. Dallas Goedert we knew was going to make the team. Should be no shock to anyone. Grant Calcaterra doesn't give you much as a blocker, but is a decent pass catcher. Jack Stoll doesn't give you much as a pass catcher, but is a decent blocker. Albert O might be the guy that can come in and add a little bit of some punch to the offense, seeing as how I liked him as the guy that you were talking to did as well. A former Missouri Tiger, a former SEC first-team rookie, and also a former SEC second team guy, if I'm not mistaken. But had some good years in Missouri. As you stated, didn't necessarily translate to the NFL per se, but a lot of that could be demonstrated by the fact that Denver didn't have much of an offense to surround him with, and didn't really have much of a signal caller to get the ball to him. But really solid guy, 6'5", 258 pounds, runs the 40-yard dash in 4.4 seconds, and could be the guy that we were hoping Tyree Jackson might have ended up being.
Freakish athletically, and he may get a chance to play, but then again, he may not, because the Eagles have more moves to make because they got a couple more holes. But before we go to that, they did, Howie Roseman specifically, when asked about picking up Albert O, said, and you did catch his final preseason game where he went for over 100 yards. You just don't see guys getting 100-yard games in the preseason. And they did keep Ricks, who some people thought might not be able to make it because he wasn't as good in practice, but he played really well in the preseason game. Most people believe that the Eagles try and put less emphasis on preseason games, just judged by how they use their own players, but I guess they do put enough of an emphasis on it when it comes to evaluating, because they reached out for Albert O, and they did keep Ricks on the 53-man roster. Do you think there is a change in the way the Eagles evaluate players before the season gets underway?
They probably could have just understated what they do some. Obviously, the preseason games don't mean as much to them as they stated as the joint practices do, but they do mean something. And, it was probably the hit that Reed Blankenship got in the final preseason game a year ago that probably earned him a roster spot. So they are paying attention. They obviously need to, but Eli Ricks, as you stated, didn't have much of a summer as far as like what we were seeing without the pads on. But once the pads came on, you saw the pick six against Baltimore. Bit of an up and down performance against Cleveland, gave up a long touchdown pass, but rebounded pretty nicely against the Indianapolis Colts and everything with a nice showing against their first team offense. So really like what I've seen with him. And obviously there was the concern that if they actually tried to put him on waivers, that he wasn't actually going to be able to be somebody that they'd be able to bring back. Mario Goodrich, for whatever reason, some people disagree with this, but I actually had him and Mekhi Gardner ahead of Eli Ricks. But sometimes the splash plays will do it for you, and the only thing that you can do is make the most of your opportunities when they came. Eli obviously did that. Mario had some strong showing. So as you mentioned, coming in, got a very heavy cornerback room right now, which is obviously going to change. And again, we could see the change with the tight ends as well, because as you said, we really don't need four. But this is obviously not going to be the lineup that we take into the first week of action in Foxborough. So there's time to get things done, and I trust that Howie Roseman and his crew will be able to get things done and have this team right where it needs to be, because obviously you need a punter.
And we'll get to the punter in a second. I was impressed by Riggs. Maybe that's just me. I do watch all the preseason games. I only went to one Eagles practice all year, so that's when I get to see the kid. And, yeah, he opened my eyes. So I thought he kind of won himself a job. And part of the reason why I think he's here is I think you also have to read the room, and you have to judge the rest of the National Football League teams. And if you wanted to try and get the kid back to your practice squad, that doesn't happen if another team claims him. And I think they thought that he was ripe to be claimed, so he said, let's keep him for now, and then we'll see how it shakes out. Maybe at some time we drop him to the practice squad and elevate someone else. So I don't know that Ricks is guaranteed to be on the roster all 17 games, but I'm not surprised at all he will be for the first game of the season. Yeah, 7 corners is more than you need. I like Goodrich. I think Goodrich is probably going to be the number one slot backup, right? Devontae Maddox, it's almost when he's going to get hurt, not if he's going to get hurt. It's a yearly occurrence that Maddox goes down. You think they play Goodrich there if he does go down, or do you think the practice reps that they got for an outside corner, starting outside corner to go in and play a little slot in practice action, do you think they'll move Bradbury in there, or do you just think that was to give him another look at how the field actually plays out?
No, they try to be top secret about everything, but nothing they do is for no reason. You wanted to get a look at Bradbury. He hasn't had a ton of slot cornerback snaps in his career, but he has had several. I think I saw him there in Carolina quite a few times, but again, nothing they do is for no reason. Bradbury is somebody that could probably move inside. Me personally, I'd like to see my all-pro corner on the outside taking on some of the best in the game, but at the same time, if you have someone capable on the outside, like maybe a Josh Jobe, maybe an Eli Ricks, and we'll see how Mario Goodrich develops if this is close to the lineup that they'll end up keeping. It's a nice luxury to have that you can move your all-pro corner inside, shut somebody down there to completely take the slot game out of the equation, and then have somebody capable on the other side as Darius Slay takes over and takes the best wide receiver out of the game, hopefully. So, but to your point, I do think Mario Goodrich with his skill set and also with his frame, I think I had it pulled up here, he's actually around the 6 foot, 186 pound range. Probably the best option they have to go in and back up Avonte Maddox, who, as you said, will miss sometimes with his playing style. Just not going to be able to play a full 17-game schedule as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed. And it all comes down to a matchup thing. Like CeeDee Lamb plays a lot of slot for the Cowboys. So if you're worried about CeeDee and you want to try and put Bradbury in there on him on the slot, might not be a bad way to go. So I'm tipping my cap to the new defensive coordinator who's trying to stay a little bit more flexible than the previous defensive coordinator they had. All right, so a quick breakdown of the Eagles roster. 4 tight ends, 4 wide receivers, 4 running backs. We all kind of expected that. 4 tackles, 4 guards. Oh, they're right in that 4 number. 1 center. that Kelsey guy. Now, we all expect him to play every single snap of every single game, but things happen from time to time. He misses a play. He's got to come out for a couple plays. He'll go back in with broken appendages, but he's that tough. When he goes out, are they going to move Juergens back over to center? Because they don't really have a backup center on this roster right now.
They don't. Got into the point that you made before we came on, and as I've been listening to you earlier tonight, they are void of that backup center. You do have the option of moving Cam Juergens in, and sometimes I tend to forget that Landon Dickerson also has some experience with center too. Probably wouldn't want to move him from the left guard position. And most of what I've typically seen from Jeff Stoutland is he'd rather move one guy than two. But if that's what the situation is, that's what the situation is. I don't see a position as to where they need to shuffle the O-line as much. I like Sewell Opeta. Fred Johnson definitely earned his spot, and Tyler Steen is definitely a star in the making if he gets his opportunity sometime here in the near future. But the best option that they have obviously would be to move Cam Juergens back inside and, have him anchor the offensive line, seeing as he had the most recent experience there.
All right. There is one position, flipping over to defense, that just I really was shocked by. I could not believe that they kept 7 defensive tackles. Seven. I understand it's a situational substitution position. You're going to rotate guys in and out. 4 is good. 5 is better. 6 is a lot. 7. How are you going to get 7 guys on the field? That just doesn't make sense. Cox, Contavious Street, who I didn't think had a chance to make the team, ended up doing so. Moro Jomo, he might be moved to short-term IR or something along that. That'll create a roster spot. No, they like him, but don't want to lose him, but I don't know that he's going to get any snaps. Davis, Marlon Tuipulotu, that one I should be able to say, and Carter and Milton Williams. You can't keep 7 DTs. Why would you need 7 DTs? I know it's the Eagles' DNA to always stock the line, but this is overstocking, is it not?
It is. I'm going to kind of lean on what they told me a long time ago, what I never saw, that Milton Williams can play outside if necessary. Hadn't really seen that. Maybe they borrow from some of the scheme stuff we saw last year where they give Fletcher Cox the opportunity to play on that sub-outside, which kind of, helped him to some degree. Overstock, like you said, I think if we're talking about Moro Ojomo, rookie draft pick, I kind of have like some of the same vibes about him that we were talking about Eli Ricks. He was actually one of those guys that I was actually thinking if they tried to move him through waivers, that might be a guy they lost. I like what I saw from him. Unfortunate with the injury, of course, but maybe there's a chance that had he sustained that injury and then, there was some concern about that, maybe he could have slid through and everything, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry. I think he'll be somebody that they can work with in the near future. I'm like you. I thought Contavious Street didn't have much of a chance to make the roster with all the other guys. And we know the fondness for Marlon Tuipulotu, as the Eagles have just tried as best they can to just keep finding backup nose tackles. And regardless of who they try to bring in, maybe possibly as a Tuipulotu replacement, they just seem to keep going back with him because they do trust him. And he does have some ability. But as we mentioned with Avonte Maddox, he has had the injury bug bite him a couple times as well. But I'm fine with the overstock to some degree. Again, we saw some of Fletcher Cox on the outside. I've heard rumors that Milton Williams can do the same thing. Maybe there's a possibility if we start going like to some other positions of need and try to stock some other areas and everything, like maybe try to find a 4th linebacker to help these other 3 guys out. Maybe there's a possibility that Contavious Street ends up being the odd man out at that point. Only time will tell in that arena. But I'm satisfied with what they have here because the main thing for me is I didn't want to lose Moro Jomo, and that's probably the guy that you're looking at being inactive on Sundays as we start to move through the regular season.
2 things about specials before I let you run. Yeah, they got to find a punter, and I didn't scour the waiver wire yet to see how many punters were actually relief. Anybody's got any experience, has actually done it on a decent level. I was not an Aaron Sippas fan. Sorry, just wasn't all that good. So if they want to move on from, that's perfectly fine. But someone must punt for the Eagles, and I won't even. If you've got a name and you want to throw out Jody, look for them. And oh, by the way, they have to get through the entire waiver claim. And there's other teams that may be looking. If there's a really good punter out there, the Eagles may never get a shot at him at number 31 on the waiver claim list. If you got a name for me, give it to me. If not, then tell me what position you think they're going to trim. Somebody's got to come off the roster, because when they add a punter, which they must, someone has to go. Who's the most likely on the 53 now to be that guy?
I have no idea what they're going to be doing a punter, to be honest with you. I remember looking at a couple of Green Bay games, and I saw a couple of guys there that looked decent. Never really caught either one of them name, but I remember telling myself, if the Aaron Siposs thing doesn't work out, maybe we can grab one of those guys and lose that battle.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't want Jake Elliott to do that. We saw him do it in emergency situations, and I think got one off for about 35 yards, which probably equals what we'll probably see from Aaron Siposs if he kind of hung around. But let's just hope the plan of working some guys out and getting somebody in here in an emergency situation that can kind of help them out. Maybe that's the best route to go, and maybe they do find somebody. I have to hope beyond hope that there has to be somebody out there, but with the overabundance of special teams guys that we saw released lately, I'm starting to ask myself if those guys weren't good enough to play on the teams that they were on, why we would want them here. But worst case scenario, Jody, might be the most realistic, and that might be a situation where we see Aaron Siposs return, see him added to the practice squad, and see him elevated for it, maybe at least the first 3 weeks of the season. Because the one thing I can say about Aaron is he actually does look better in September than he does in January. So if there's a situation where you have to bring him back for the first 3 weeks of the season, elevate him from the practice squad, at least that buys you some time, and then maybe at that point they can find somebody and they can actually move into a more permanent role. But to answer your question, as far as maybe like the first guy out, I'll probably go stay with, like I said, Kentavious Street.
Yep.
Probably Mario Goodrich if we're talking about somebody, and probably take that cornerback room back down to 6 guys.
Understood. All right. And I'm going to come to defense of a guy here who I have at times questioned. I was surprised when the Eagles gave Michael Clay a contract extension this offseason. I did not think the Eagles' special teams were very good last year, and I didn't know that he had merited a reward after that season. Maybe it was just the punt return in the Super Bowl was too fresh in my mind, and I put too much emphasis on that. But I've questioned the whole Michael Clay thing. I'm going to cut him a ton of slack this year, because the shape of this roster right now, it's almost like, yeah, Michael, you're going to have to make up special teams as you go along. They lose McPherson, who's one of their best special. They lose Bradley, who's one of their best special teams players. They didn't bring in anybody who you would say Ben Sumeren didn't make the team, which means at best he's going to be on the practice squad. Do we just hope that Jake Elliott kicks it out of the end zone every single kickoff this year, and or get a punter who can kick it out of bounds? Because I don't know that they have anybody that can cover any kicks.
And I agree with you. That's kind of what was my concern, was probably my biggest concern about the cornerback room. You want that 6th guy, or in this case, the 6th and 7th guy, to be able to play special teams, and that may not be what they have there. I kind of wonder what Michael Clay's thinking today, because, you don't have a punter. As you stated, you got both McPherson and you got Bradley on injury reserve. And arguably your best kick returner is a guy who's on the reserve suspended by commissioner list, and he won't be able to play until 2024. Mm-hmm. So I know the Eagles are on top of this, and again, they had to trim this roster down from the 90 guys down to the allowable 53. And obviously this is not the roster, again, that we'll be looking at when we walk into Foxborough for week 1. So I know they're on top of it. They got a couple of weeks to get this right. But first order of business now, typically we've seen them address like safety or cornerback needs or any defensive back need late in the process, but maybe the game plan this time was to just trim this roster down to the allowable 53 men, and then we'll address special teams in the weeks that follow in between the close of the final preseason game and the beginning of the first regular season game. Hopefully that's the game plan.
They've got a couple of great posts on their website right now about the Eagles roster, Meet the New 53, that will change in the next 24 hours. So you better get to InsideTheIggles.com, check what Jeff has put up there, because there will be changes as of tomorrow when the waiver wire heats up. Jeff, great stuff. Appreciate it. Whenever you come on, thanks for staying up late with me tonight, buddy.
I appreciate you having me on, man. Have a good night, okay?
My pleasure. That is Geoff Knox from InsideTheIggles.com. Good Eagles website that I check basically every morning before I do Birds 365. All right, Jody Mac coming back. We could talk about the Birds. Jeff and I tackled a couple of different things. Love to get your take on it. Somebody's got to punt, right? Who's going to go when somebody has to be brought in as their punter? There's a little bit of an imbalance to the Eagles roster. It's good. It's talented. It's deep. And they're still my choice to win the NFC. I'm not moving off any of that because of questions that I have about the roster. But I'll continue to throw a couple questions out there, at least as I see them. Want to get your take, too. And, oh, by the way, the Phillies are killing it these days. So both teams in town going well. Hit me up on my telephone lines. I'll take your calls all the way till 2A when John Johnson comes aboard with the overnight. Cleared out the lines. You buzz. You're first. Get on right now. 215-592-9494.